Hello, 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 and welcome back to Marketing, Branding, and Getting the Sale show. We are here again, myself and my co-host, and today we are talking about creating a strategy. Very, very important topic, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Make sure you put hashtag live in the chat if you're watching right now, and hashtag replay if you are catching up with us later. First off, though, let's do some quick introductions. My name is Una Doyle. I'm a business strategist and coach, and I can help any established business to identify at least an extra 50K in only 50 minutes or more. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in finding out how I do. I can share with you a video that shows you exactly the principles that we use to do that. Jess, over to you.
Good morning, and for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jess, and businesses tend to work with me and go through my 6-step loyalty process when they need a bit of direction and clarity on what to focus on next. So maybe they feel like they've been gambling with their marketing budgets, not getting any profit from it in return. So if you resonate with that as well, step 1 of the 6-step process is the perfect start. So if you want to know more about what that is, drop me a message and I'll send you more information.
Over to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Una. Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS Limited. We are an outsourced business development service. So if you're looking to get in front of more people, but don't have the resource, don't like to, or don't want to pick up the phone, or are just afraid to pick up the phone, then please give me a call. We are here to help. We can put you in front of people. We can update your CRM, send out email collateral, and we can also help train you to improve your cold calling techniques if you want it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jess and Stephen. Good morning, Chris. Happy that you are with us live as well. Right, so strategy. What is strategy? I've had so many people kind of go, well, I hear this word bandied around all the time, but what does it actually mean? So if you look it up, the definition, it basically says a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim. And I think there's several points of that I want to break down. But before we even get into that, Stephen, what's your thoughts on that definition? A plan of action designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim.
Yeah, so for me, when I hear the word strategy, I think this is a long-term thing. So this is, and it's in my head, I'm thinking that involves a lot of people. People from all facets of your business, if you're a larger organization, or people that you outsource work to that can help you ultimately grow your business. That's what I would say is how I would associate the word strategy.
What about you, Jess?
For me, I think what's really key is having them tactics. So, like you said, from that definition from strategy, it's about planning, what that plan of action is. And I've seen plenty of strategies that are too vague, are too open, and don't end with them tactics and actionable tactics that you're actually taking. So that's something that when I work on strategies within the branding process, that's something that I make sure that we've got when at the end of it, we've got them actionable tactics, you know exactly what to do and when to do it. And I know that's something that you focus on as well, Una. So yeah, having them tactics, them plans, them action points is key.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I want to kind of focus on as well is the distinction between a tactic and a strategy. So a strategy might be made up of tactics, but quite often people implement, and this is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, is that they kind of jump on the latest bandwagon of, what's the latest fad, what's the latest thing that's in vogue, what's the latest thing everybody's teaching, and they haven't got a strategy behind it. So they're implementing a tactic in isolation. And I think what's really important that isn't mentioned in the kind of dictionary definition of strategy, but is the concept of principles and taking principles focused action, and having principles focused strategies rather than tactical thinking, because that tactical thinking tends to be very short term. And I think it's so easy for business owners to go, I haven't got enough money coming in this month or next month, and they kind of rush into action, and there's no strategic thinking behind it, and they don't understand the principles of why a particular tactic works or doesn't work. So yeah, this is a big mistake that I see people making. That they, and actually a lot of the time I talk to business owners and they don't really know why they do what they do. They either do what they learned to do when they were employed, or just what they see other people doing, and they haven't even figured out if it's actually right for their business or not. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
You see, if you when you're talking about strategy versus tactics, the easiest way for me to understand what you're saying is to then translate that into a sport, let's say. So the
Mm.
strategy of a football game is to win the game. The tactics are, what do you do to win the game? You would deploy.
Ah,
That's how I would interpret it. Tactics
yeah,
are
I
short
disagree
term.
actually.
You
So
disagree or you agree?
respectfully, I disagree.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
because
right.
the strategy, the plan of action. So that's the how you're going to win the game. It's the plan of action. But there may be tactics within that. So there may be specific plays. So say it was a football game, right? There may be. I'm just kind of going off what I've seen in Ted Lasso, right? I'm not a football expert, but they would draw up those
Yeah,
tactics,
good show.
those plays.
Yeah,
Though each of those plays is a tactic. Understanding which ones to use and when is the strategy behind it. So, and I think sometimes as well, if you were to look at, so say you were to look at a tactic for generating leads, okay, then, but if you don't have a strategy for customer acquisition and actually keeping those customers, you might attract the wrong people. So, for instance, there was someone who I interviewed on my podcast, um, um, uh, you know, well, a few months ago, and it'll be coming out. Podcast will be launching again in September. And but they had done some Facebook ads, and on the face of it, the Facebook ads had worked really well. But what they found was the clients they got from Facebook ads didn't stay, whereas the clients they got from other means did stay with them long term. So when you take into account things like lifetime customer value, then that is a way more profitable business when you're acquiring customers and that you don't have a leaky bucket, that customers are coming in and they're going out, they're coming in and they're going out. Whereas if you're actually acquiring customers and getting to keep them for a longer period of time, or they buy one thing and then they buy another and then they buy another, whatever way that is, that's going to be way more profitable for you for sure. So I think, and this is thing is like, you can are we getting into semantics a bit? But I actually think it's important because I want people to think long term. So that long term or overall aim part of the definition, I think, is actually really important. So if we break this down, the first thing we've got to do is understand, well, what is your long term aim? Okay, getting clear on that has got to be step one. So because until you know what your long-term objectives are, then how can you know what's the best plan of action to put together? So people need to get clear on that. And I think sometimes it's easy for people to get stuck in the get bogged down in the day to day, and they're not thinking about that. Yeah. So okay. So James is just saying here, to give another example, running competitions as a tactic can drive engagement, but it also dilutes the brand in the longer term. So yeah, I mean, if that's not part of the brand strategy, then yeah, absolutely. Um, so we can do tactics that on the face of it look successful, but they don't contribute to the long-term objectives. So number one, you've got to get clear on your longer term objectives, and really understand, and I would just say as well, the second thing is to just understand, why does something work? So if there's a tactic that's really popular right now, you've got to understand, like, the world of marketing is, some tactic comes along, somebody does really well from it, then they're asked to teach it, so they start teaching it, then everybody starts doing it. The customer base becomes much more sophisticated because they're hearing the same kind of things, or the same kind of, they're experiencing the same kind of tactics from people, and so over time it then works less and less. But if you understand the principles behind why something works, then and understand that a tactic is typically short-lived, then you can, be ready with, okay, so what's the next thing that's going to work? Or sometimes you might choose to go the complete opposite direction and to be different from everybody else and to stand out, and say, well, no, I'm not going to do this short-term thinking. And it's not that I'm not saying that tactics are necessarily bad, but I think if you use a tactic strategically, that's good. If you blindly are following the crowd and implementing tactics, that typically is not so good. It's not going to give you the long-term benefits that you want. I know. What's your thoughts, Stephen?
I agree. Absolutely. I think having clear objectives is key. It's certainly up there in terms of how to prevent strategies from failing is to have clear objectives. So yeah, I will respectfully agree with you on that one.
Jess, what's your thoughts?
For me, there's three things coming to mind as we're speaking. One is having strategies for different aspects of your business, and they will be made up in different ways. So, you do have your business strategies that come with your business planning and that kind of the core of how your business runs and operates. You've got a marketing strategy, which again, most of us are kind of knowledgeable about in creating a marketing strategy before we do a campaign. But then the one that a lot of people miss is the brand strategy as well. So having the different strategies for different aspects of your business, I think that's something to remember. Another thing is if you're listening and thinking, oh, I've got to think of this, I've got to think of that, I've not done a strategy before you even touch strategies, before you even think about what is my objective, what's my challenges in this, what are my tactics going to be, before even thinking, breaking it down like that, making sure you've got everything in place, because understanding your competition, understanding your customers, really making sure you've got all them boxes ticked before doing anything with your strategy. So if, as we're speaking, it's feeling a bit, oh, this is a bit nerve-wracking, where do I even start? I don't even know. More often than not, we need to take a few steps back and just make sure you've got everything. So I just wanted to kind of say that as well, because they're the things coming to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about like my 5-step profit proven formula. The first step is foundations, and so having strategies, and being strategic in your approach for business planning, for marketing, for your sales is really, really important. And client retention as well. I know we focus more on the getting clients, or well, a lot of what we talk about is about getting clients, but we want to make sure we're keeping them as well. Yeah, and Chris is just saying here, make sure to get other people in the business involved. Absolutely. So instead of, if it's just you just a Jess or Stephen. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, even where you do have teams, we work with businesses that have teams as well. So yeah, and then let me see. So James is saying, tactics help at reaching targets of the marketing funnel, but as a short-term strategy, they don't take into consideration the larger business strategy. Absolutely. So ideally what you want to have is to look at the different areas of your business and to have a plan of action, which will probably make up some tactics, to implement the goals for each of those things. You want to be able to get clients, deliver to clients, get paid for delivering to clients, and look at, well, how can you continue to serve those clients that you have acquired? How do you make that bigger impact? So absolutely. Okay, so in terms then of of actually thinking about it, so we said get clear on your objectives, but I just want to make sure there's a question I'd like you to ask yourself as part of that as well, which is to ask, why is this objective important? So and to really prioritize what are the objectives, and not to have too many, but to have enough that actually makes sense for your business stage of development and growth, and for who's in the business, and making sure that you're taking into account the landscape as well. I think that's really important. I think quite often I come across people who kind of go to one of two extremes. So one extreme is, I'm constantly looking at the competition and what they're doing, but not paying enough attention to my own business and my own clients. Oh, apologies. Gosh, I normally have everything turned off. Let me just. And then the other extreme is where they're just so blinkered that they're not kind of really paying attention to what is going on in the external world, and can get caught unawares because of that. I think that's really important. Um, so yeah, and then when it comes to actually putting the plan of action together, um, it's a plan of action, and so this is like how when I'm doing my 90-day planning with my clients, we're looking at, okay, so these are the numbers that you want to create. What are the actions that need to happen in order to create those? And you want to tie those activities with your numbers. It's no use just creating a random set of numbers. You've got to look at, well, what happens. So going back to the football analogy, it's like having going and kind of climbing up onto the scoreboard and changing the numbers rather than actually rearranging what's happening on the pitch. What are the players actually doing to get you the scores on the board? So I think that's really important as well. So make sure that your plan of action relates to your objectives. It's tied into it. If you look at your strategy, look at your strategic plan, there's got to be a reason for everything in there. And then I would have a look at, well, what's there that there isn't really a strong enough reason for. This is why a lot of business owners and their teams end up really busy, but not actually driving the business forward, So yeah, thoughts, Jess?
It's long-term vision, isn't it? And having that objective, what you want to achieve, because we all know kind of what we want to achieve when we break it down. And then to me, kind of going into the framework of how I do it, which might help as well. Once we've got that overall objective, we break it down into the vision. So what does that vision bring? So again, like you say, the landscape of things. Once we know the vision, we break that down into 3 particular goals from that objective and vision. So now you've got 3 things that you're focusing on. Then you need to think about how it's done within the branding side, is looking at what challenges might come about for them 3 goals. So what challenges might come up that that stop you from achieving them goals? Because if you know about them before they happen, then you can solve them before they become too much of an issue. Once you've got them 3 challenges, you can then create strategies around them goals and challenges. And then once you've got them strategies, you can then come up with the tactics. So again, having the tactics that are really planned out and thought through, not just pulled out of thin air. So yeah, I completely agree in making sure you've got all these things broken down, and it does start with that overall landscape, which ties into your other strategies as well, doesn't it? Like your business planning. When you're doing your business planning, you're thinking of these things. So tie them all in together, have them all linking into each other.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think, I want to make a distinction between your vision and the landscape, because your vision is internal. But when I was talking about landscape, I was talking more external. So what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in terms of the level of your clients' sophistication. I think that's something that's often not taken into account. And then people are doing the same thing. They're doing things that used to work, but they don't work now because your clients aren't the same as they were, So I think that makes a bit of a difference as well. So let me see. We got another comment here from Chris. So once you know what you want, you can decide on the tactics to use, like getting someone to book appointments, Stephen, or make follow-up calls. How do you want to get in front of people and make the sale? Yeah, absolutely. So it's it's going through this thing is a process, and it's not just a process is repeatable. So one of the other things that we need to make sure to do is to make sure that we plan time to actually review the progress of the strategies that we've chosen to implement. How are they working? Do you need to take some remedial action? Obviously, as Jess said, if you can figure out what might get in the way. So we have an exercise that my clients do as part of our business planning that we do before they even get to any strategies, which is called unblocking blocks to flow. And we look at the whole life. So personal stuff and business stuff, because do you know what? Like I'd say 50% of the time, the blocks are actually, and I'm not talking necessarily mindset blocks, but it can be, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's things like people's physical environment, or them actually have a gap in a team member, or they need to learn a new skill, or do you know what I mean? And if you get clear on all those things and then make sure you're monitoring your progress, your chances of success are so far increased, to actually just have that clarity. Yeah, clarity and specificity. I think that's really clear. So Stephen's laughing because I use that word a lot, don't I?
Yes. No, absolutely. But what I also think is, Kate, you talk about measuring. I think talked about measuring success. I think when you're implementing a strategy, you should, celebrate the milestones, because a strategy, like I said, is a long term, and you'll come along bumps in the road where things don't quite go according to plan. So rather than wait until the end to say, "Oh my God, I've implemented this strategy and it's working," there's going to be little milestones along the way that you want to celebrate, isn't there? So you should recognize everything, because if something doesn't go the right way, you get a little bit deflated and you might lose a bit of momentum and think, oh, it's not working, but it actually is working. It's just going to take a bit longer.
Mm.
So celebrate the small wins, however small they are, and then it just makes it so much more. The taste is a lot better,
Yeah.
rather than when you get to the end and you've implemented everything is working. So yeah, that was my little.
I love that. I want to say as well, because it was only the other day I was thinking this as well. Last week I was on holiday in Scotland, and we did a walk up a mountain. We weren't supposed to go up this mountain, but that's another story. We ended up this mountain, but halfway up, I remember, climbing up thinking, oh, I wonder what it's going to be like on way down. Is it going to be this hard? And then I thought, why am I already thinking of that? I'm already thinking about going down, and I've not even got up to the top yet. And then my next thought was, oh my God, look how much I've still got to go. Like, you can't even see the top. It's up in the clouds. And I was thinking, like, as I was walking, how much we do this on a day to day as well, how much we're looking, at what we've not achieved, or how much we're looking at, oh, what about when I have succeeded? What's that going to feel like? And not just turning around on a walk, just turning around and going, oh my God, look how high I am. Look at everything I can see. So I took some pictures at that point, thinking, soak in that moment, another, not few steps, but another bit up before getting to the top. Again, we sat down, turned around, had a bit of a snack, and again, just soaked in the moment. So again, with you saying that, it's just really ironic, because going through that, even though it's walking from mountains completely different to running a business, it still had that kind of that metaphorical feeling, if you will. So yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny actually, because I did a similar thing on my holiday. So that's why we weren't here last week, by the way, folks, in case you missed it. So I was over in Ireland, and myself and my sister went on a bike ride, 23 kilometers. Now,
Wow.
I haven't been on a bike for, I think, like 2 decades at least. And oh my God, it was fantastic. Now, it was an e-bike, so we had some help. But you have to pedal all the time. An e-bike, you're not sat there like on a scooter or a motorbike, not doing anything. So you are keeping going. So, we were beginning to feel it by the end. But it's a great picture. In fact, I'll probably have it on LinkedIn soon, where we were at a sign that showed how many miles we'd done, which is how many kilometers. I have to keep remembering Ireland's kilometers. So we had done, I don't know, like 16 kilometers, and we only had X many left to go. And yeah, it was great, because, and actually even just to understand, because we were wondering, how far have we come? Do we have to do the same again? Oh my God, am I going to be able to manage that? And to go, oh, we're this way through. Fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Okay, I can really relax. I know that I can absolutely make it to our destination. And no one's going to have to come and rescue us. It's going to be okay. And yeah, so absolutely. So I think monitoring your progress and celebrating those milestones, for sure. I think that's really important. So thanks, Jess and Stephen, for those. So great. Oh, thank you, Chris. Chris said you guys were missed. Branding, sales, and conquering mountains. Absolutely. So when you think about, I'm curious actually. So when you think about being more strategic. Like what I've talked about, some of the mistakes I see people making in terms of not identifying blocks, not being principles focused in what they're doing, not having enough clarity on those longer term objectives. What are the mistakes do you see people making, Jess or Stephen?
I've got one. When people are focusing on a strategy, what about the business that they're currently doing, like business, forgetting about business as usual. They
Yeah.
put all their efforts into the new strategy, and what they're doing currently, which might already be working, they kind of the impetus goes off that, comes onto the new strategy, and then their business as usual starts to waver. And
Yes.
so
That's a great one. Absolutely love it, and it's so important because, as you say, look, this is really easy for those of us who are more creatively minded. We get excited by new ideas, and we're like, oh, okay, I get to do something new. I'm quite excited at the moment because I'm actually planning a new coaching program, and so I'm excited because I've had this idea. I'm kind of going on with it. I'm planning it, right now. But this is actually something that I came across this way of doing things a year, 2 years ago. But even though I was excited by the idea of it, that I didn't do it then because it wasn't the right time. So I think that's the other thing is about, make sure that, an idea might be great, but is it great for you? Like, I haven't talked about flow yet. So are you choosing strategies and tactics that actually are aligned with you and your natural strengths and personality, or the team member who's going to be implementing it, whether they're in-house or outsourced? Is that alignment there? Are they going to be in flow? Okay, so flow, that state of being where you're just totally on it, where you're really focused and more accurate, you're adding a lot more value, you get a lot more done, productivity goes through the roof, communication accuracy improves, feels good, right? We all know that feeling of flow. So we want to make sure that our business is made up of structures and strategies that help us be more in flow. So I think that's important. And yes, as you're saying, Stephen, you can't just forget about what's going on. There's a real temptation that I see with a lot of creative business owners, that they get excited about that new thing and everything falls away. But not only that, they don't repeat what works. I did this in my first year of business. I got an £8,000 contract from Argos for one particular region. Did I go and talk to all the other Argos regions to see if they wanted the same thing? No.
But you've never made that same mistake twice, though, have you?
I probably did for a few years, actually. Before I understood about flow, and because like when we're aware of what our weaknesses are, we can make sure to mitigate those. Okay, so it's quite interesting. So I think it's I had to understand how. I also had to do the mindset work to not be self-sabotaging myself, even though it was unknowing. I just was like an excited bunny hopping around from one strategy and tactic to the next, kind of like, shiny new object syndrome for sure. So it took, for those mistakes to really have a big financial impact, and for me to kind of have that wake up moment of realizing I have to do my business differently. That set me off on the path that I am, I'm implementing now. So yeah, I think that's really important as well, to make sure that you repeat what works. So yeah, another comment from James: experiment with strategies and tactics before scaling the activity with resources. Yes, absolutely. That's a great one, James. Thank you. I think that's so important. I see this all the time, kind of with ads as well, actually, that not just that, but make sure any scaling activities you're doing, that you do really have the foundations in place first. So that's important as well. Yeah, yeah, it's I think that's important. So, yeah, let me see. So, just going to pop up here what I was saying about repeating what works. And then we've got another comment from Chris, as well as measuring progress, is key to plan that you can respond to the response to the output, especially with a small team. Yeah, being able to react and organize for sure. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, I love that 90-day planning process, kind of timeline. And obviously, want to be checking in on things. So depending on whether my clients are private or group, we're checking in on progress every 1 to 2 weeks. And so, if you've got one or more teams, you want to be doing that in your weekly meetings. And ideally kind of in a way that doesn't take up a load of time, but just making sure that that update on progress is clear and immediately being able to identify issues. What's getting in the way? What isn't working? What's working like gangbusters, and we need to actually get some more resources behind this. So I think that's one of those things, if in the planning process you consider that. So if you might have more client work but you don't have team in-house, do you have a bank of freelancers, or do you have an employment process that boom, you're able to implement it and get the right people? Do you maybe even want to start that process to have those people, potential candidates ready to be able to come in? Would you then maybe look at investing in working with a coach or someone on your processes to streamline activity? This is working, let's actually just look at what can we automate. These are all things that you want to be doing as well. So yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Brilliant. So what else do we need to talk about in terms of strategies? Anything that we have missed out?
The kind of biggest mistakes, just to recap, maybe some that we've maybe already spoke about, being specific enough. So them actually being too broad. So yeah, if you've got strategies in place, a common mistake is not being specific enough. If you've not even got strategies in place, the common mistake is not having the right foundation. So knowing that step. And if you've got strategies but they're not working, then again, planning what right strategies you've got, whether it's right for your business or not. Again, going back to your marketing kind of aspect of your business, a lot of the time we can create a strategy for our, social media. We'll create a strategy for our social media, and then we'll just roll with that strategy for maybe 2 years or more,
Right.
and not come
Yeah.
back in and keep reviewing it, making sure what's working, what's not. And then that's when we get into the habit of just, oh, this is a good idea, I'll do that, or this is a good idea. And then that's when the tactics are driving the strategy rather than the other way around. So yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I've just popped up, like, put your strategies in writing and explore all the ins and outs. So what we were talking about, anticipating what might go wrong, anticipating what might go fantastically. How are you going to cope with each of those scenarios? And there is just something about putting things in writing. I have it all the time where I talk to business owners, and we talk about their goals, and they're like, oh, that's great, it's really exciting. Have you got a plan to achieve that? Oh yeah, great. Can you send it to me? Oh, no, it's in my head. It's like, I guarantee you, if a plan is in your head, it is not in enough specific detail for it to actually happen and really work. So there's a real power in putting things in writing, particularly if you've got the right structure behind it, so kind of what are the sections that you need to be looking at, and just really getting clear. A very simple kind of, well, it's kind of more of a project plan, but we can work for any strategy. Is to get clear, well, what's the purpose, what's the objectives, who needs to be involved, when and where are things happening, and how do you measure success? So going through those different things is really important. Okay, we've got a really long one here from James. I'm going to flash it up, but you need to read this one. I know it's not going to all come up because it's too big. So knowledge management in marketing growth is necessary, although often missing in smaller organizations. Marketing playbooks to record what's worked before. What growth experiments you're trying, the results, optimizations can you use to onboard new staff, offboard your role. Exactly, yeah. If you want to kind of move on, or you get promoted, or just as a business owner, if you want to step back more from the day-to-day, so it's the evidence to bring to management when a change in direction is needed. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things. If you have a plan in writing, then you already have that, and you can look at the results from that and put those in writing as well, and look at, okay, so what do we need to turn, like, this project has worked, we've launched X, right, what's the process to then keep, making an impact and benefiting from this thing as well. So yeah, absolutely. And then Chris is saying, what about budget planning and allocation, feeding into the point around strategies for different area of your business? Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the thing, is that you want to understand, when you're doing your business planning, you've got to understand, well, what's your revenue plan around that, but you also need to understand the cost base behind it as well. I think it's important, there's often some great ways to increase profitability, looking at those things, which often business owners aren't looking at necessarily. They're often so focused on, I need more leads. And it's like, well, actually, if you were to do different things with the leads that you have, you actually would make a lot more money. Or if you were to change this with your customers, or what, like, so often, people have got absolute gold in their businesses, and because they're not thinking strategically, they're just missing out on so many revenue and profit opportunities. So yeah, getting into the finances of it, which, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if you're a business owner, you've got to understand the finances behind things, and not just from a cost base, but also from a value base as well. I was working with a client this week on business planning, and they on their marketing stuff, and they have a new offer that they're working through at the moment, and they were looking at pricing, and they'd worked out all the cost base, and that was great, but I was like sat there going, this is way undercharging. And so we had a conversation around that, and when they switched into looking at the value, right, so this particular thing was that they would be able to save people at least a couple of hours a week by doing this kind of work. And I was like, okay, well, if you take that typical hourly rate for that type of industry, and you then look at, well, over a year, how much time has that saved them? So they could go out and, generate revenue work, and have the time to implement it. And that could bring them in X amount of extra revenue. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, that's blown those initial figures out of the water. So we need to make sure we're putting ourselves in our customer's shoes. Yes, look at cost, but also look at value. You want to make sure you're using value-based pricing. Yeah, fabulous. Great, Stephen, you look like you're champing at the bit to say something there.
Really? No. Did we talk about getting buy-in from other team members? Did we
Yeah, there was something Chris mentioned earlier on.
Okay, yes, Chris.
Yeah. Well, actually, he talked about getting input, but then actually, once you've decided on a strategic plan of action, then you do need to make sure that you do have that buy-in. So once decisions have been made. So yeah.
Because there's something that goes, I think it's like loosely connected to getting buy-in, and that's a lack of alignment. So everyone knows how their little bit contributes to the larger strategy. So
Yes.
so that was what I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Stephen. Yeah, definitely, because if you get input, and then from employees, from your team members, and then the team member never hears anything again, then they kind of go, oh, typical, they've asked my input, but nothing's happened, when you could actually be acting on that input. So yeah, definitely making sure that, really, if you want to have engaged teams, they have to, number one, they need to buy into the kind of why of the company. Number two, ideally you want to have the right person in the right seat, according to their natural strengths and personality, and the role that they're doing. There's a whole other story about making sure that the roles actually fit the way people work. All too often roles are, let's have a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this other thing. It's like no one person could be successful at all those different things. It's just impossible. They're setting people up to fail. So yeah, make sure you got people in the right seat, and make sure they got the tools to do their job, and make sure they have clarity on what it actually is that they're doing and what's the impact, where do they fit in, in that workflow. It's really, really important. So yeah, I think that's a very valid point, Stephen. Fantastic. So I think what's been most significant in what we've talked about here today, Jess? What's your thoughts?
There's been a lot of significant things, but the one thing that I want to say before we finish up is making it fun. Because when I first started out in business, this kind of work, it drove me insane. I got knackered from it. It drained me. I think first ever time I really broke down everything. There were like tears in my eyes. I was like, how am I going to keep doing this all the time for my business? But as the time went on, as I really built them foundations, I really got everything into place. It's actually fun now. And I really enjoy doing it for my own business. I enjoy even more helping my clients do it for their businesses. And it's such a huge part now of how I operate, and it is such a fun part. So yeah, making it fun and remembering it can be fun. And after that practice and keeping up with it, it will be fun, I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really, really key. Just hopping up there, kind of about getting Stephen's point about getting team buy-in. So yeah, Stephen, what about you?
I think when you hear the word strategy, it can be quite daunting. But when you break it down into the 7 or 8 points that you've highlighted, or that we've highlighted, it makes it a lot more manageable. So it doesn't have to be daunting. I think take each little bit as an individual little task, and then when you build it all together, you've got the contributing factors to a successful strategy. So it doesn't have to be daunting. It is quite manageable if you step outside, look in, and think, okay, the manageable bite-sized tasks. You know what I mean? So I think for people that are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, a strategy doesn't have to be this overwhelming, daunting, oh my God. It can actually be quite easy and a joyful experience, like Jess has said, and you can smile and you can get on with it and enjoy the moment of creating something successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, actually, I'm going to do 3 things. That's all right. I think one, I always bang on about being principle focused. So make sure you try and understand why something works. What's the principle behind it, so that you can then use that principle over and over again. I think the second thing is about just be long term. Remember that part of it. Look, if your boat's sinking, you got to fill a hole for sure. But then, how do you make sure those holes don't crop up again? So that if an emergency is over, then that's what the next thing you want to be thinking about as well. Actually, how do I prevent those holes? How do I make sure that this boat is safe and secure? And then I think that whole thing about specificity for me is that I think it's really easy for people to fool themselves into thinking that they have a strategy, that they have that plan of action, and they haven't really thought it through enough. So get it down in writing, run it past some people who know what they're talking about. Get help if you need it, like Chris said, get help. And it might be you need help to implement parts of the strategies, or maybe you actually need help with some kind of strategy, right? So whether that's us or someone else, doesn't matter. Just get the help that you need. So yeah, wonderful. Right. So if you're watching this on the replay, please make sure if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to put them in the comments. If you found value in what you've had here today, we all offer amazing value in our different ways in our own businesses with our clients. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And so I think for today, that is all for now. So we will say bye for now, and we'll see you next week.